Rodney Orr, how long have you been covering recruiting? Because I was trying to tell the audience prior to going to, I called you the grandfather of Alabama recruiting. I hope you don't find that offensive, but you've been covering it a long time.
Well, actually, I've been following it since 1975 or so, but been covering it since 1996. So it's, what is it, 23 years.
Okay. Rodney, if I would have went back when you first started covering recruiting, and I would tell you that it's currently, I mean, when you look at popularity, and I'm sure it's the same with you, football, as far as the season, is number one. Recruiting is number two when we talk about interests and people wanting to know exactly. If I would have told you back in the 90s that this was going to be where it is with National Signing Day, and you look at big networks doing all-day shows, would you have believed me?
No. I mean, it's where it's come is just really amazing. The coverage is Ryan, back in the day, the 80s especially, and so forth and there. I mean, you hope to get a radio show with one of the recruiting analysts, like a Max Emfinger or someone like that. Even Forrest Davis back in the day, when you used to just pick up most of your information from those types of radio broadcasts, and it was very difficult to come up with daily information. So it's where it's come with the emergence of the internet is, basically you can follow it second by second.
Rodney, give me the biggest takeaways from today from an Alabama perspective. They picked up a couple of commits, and I want you to kind of break it down and give us the latest with Alabama.
Well, Ryan, I said on your show probably back, I don't know, maybe in the summer you would have me on, and I said I thought Alabama would have the number one offensive and defensive line classes in the country. I think that's pretty much held up. You look at getting Evan Neal on the offensive line, Pierce Quick, Darian Dalcourt, Amari Kite, Tanner Bowles is another guy that they signed on the offensive line. There's probably not a better group in the country. And then on the defensive line, what a class they have signed. You got DJ Dell and Ishmael Sopsher, big inside guys, Justin Aboibe, Antonio Alfano, the number one prospect in the entire country. Braylon Ingram's another guy that they signed on the defensive line. So I think when you look at that, they've certainly addressed the trenches extremely well, where games are won and lost. And so I think that's the biggest thing that sticks out to me. And then I do think that if there was one area where I'd like to have seen something maybe more, would have been maybe another inside linebacker. Obviously, they got Shane Lee, who's a very highly rated player out of Baltimore, and also Christian Harris out of Baton Rouge, who might be the most athletic linebacker in the entire class, actually. And I don't mean Alabama's class. I mean the entire 2019 class. So I think they did extremely well there. But I think, now with just the announcement of Henry To'oTo'o from Concord de La Salle, California to Tennessee, which a lot of people expected, including myself. I thought he was headed to Alabama 24 hours ago. That's kind of a blow to me.
Oh, but you told me 20 minutes ago prior to going on the air that you thought Henry T was going to end up in Tennessee. So even before he made his announcement, what changed? What do you think? What do you think got into him? Because if I look at middle linebacker, there's some playing time here in Tuscaloosa.
Yep. Had a chance. I think one thing you have to give credit to Jeremy Pruitt. I mean, I think he does an excellent job of recruiting. He's a great evaluator, number one, and been a great recruiter as well. So I think he relates extremely well to the players. But also, I think they had a connection there. Kevin Simon, a former Tennessee player, was a kind of a legendary figure, I think, at De La Salle High School. He's at Tennessee now. I think that certainly has helped them out quite a bit here on this. I also think, let's just be honest, if Tosh LaPoy's still been here, probably To'oTo'o, much better chance that he would have ended up at Tuscaloosa, I think. It's kind of hard to figure, to be honest with you, a guy like that magnitude going to Tennessee after their record this year, and it's Jeremy Pruitt's first year. They suffered 2 blowout losses at the end of the year to Missouri and Vanderbilt, but that just goes to show you that Jeremy Pruitt is convincing these guys that, hey, I'm going to get this thing turned around.
Rodney, is there anything else left for Alabama this afternoon?
No, I don't foresee anything, to be honest with you. Obviously they got Byron Young today earlier. We didn't mention by name, and Ishmael Sopsher, another defensive lineman. Those are two of the best premier elite defensive linemen in the country. Ryan, I tell you, now if Ishmael Sopsher, when he's motivated, and I've said this before, it's not anything new, but when he's motivated, this guy is just probably as good as any could be as good as any defensive lineman, maybe any defensive player in the country. I mean, he can be a dominant player. And so, I think once he gets here in this program and gets involved with, the competition here and gets pushed, the sky's the limit for him.
Well, and I think this is, that's one of the things that I think is so great about this. When you look at Alabama, it's not for everybody. This place is not for everybody. When you look at commitments, I mean, some guys don't want to come in and compete. Some guys don't want to come in and look and bust their butt and try to find a way to earn playing time. And I think we've kind of seen that over years. The players that embrace it, they come into this culture and they benefit from being, and pushed and compete within the weight room or compete on the practice field Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, leading into the Saturday game. You look at a guy like Antonio Alfano. I'm not sure if you saw this a couple of minutes ago, said that he had gained 17 pounds in 1 month and about 4 or 5 days since he's been on campus. That's incredible. 17 pounds.
Yeah, I didn't. Wow. Yeah, that is pretty incredible. You're right, Ryan. You made a comment, though, that it's not for everyone. And, it does take a certain kind of prospect. And when you look at Antonio Alfano, I mean, this guy ended up the number one player in the country, dominant defensive lineman. Again, we're talking about that defensive line. And he's a guy that committed to Alabama early, never wavered on his commitment. He has certainly committed himself to the grind. In fact, I remember that he actually came out in the middle of the recruiting process at one point and put out a note to all coaches that they could stop wasting their time calling him, that he was firmly committed to Alabama and he wasn't changing. So you look at a guy like that, I think that he could come in next year. And certainly when you look at the depth situation on the defensive line, obviously Alabama has some guys coming back, but I think you're going to see Antonio Alfano on the field immediately.
Well, and certainly there's some playing time there. Rodney, and I know you're covering recruiting, TiderInsider.com. You guys have got a special tonight dedicated to recruiting. Tell me more about what you and Gary are going to do tonight on WVUA that people can watch on the statewide syndicated satellite channels tonight, 23 here locally in Tuscaloosa. But for those out there that are throughout the state of Alabama, you can find it on DirecTV, 23, and a lot of the other satellite channels. But talk about what you and Gary are going to do tonight as far as covering National Signing Day.
Yeah, we're going to basically just recap the entire class. We'll talk, of course, about the early signing period where Alabama did so well, and then also what happened today with the picking up of Byron Young, Keelan Robinson, who we didn't mention him, the really good running back out of Washington, D.C., and then also Sopsher. So we'll recap today, but also the entire class will have video, discussion and analysis of that. And also, as we always do, we'll take some phone calls.
Well, and Rodney, I think the other part that is going to be huge today, Nick Saban's going to talk in about 90 minutes. There is a lot of things that is on the plate. If Nick Saban chooses to talk about it, there's a lot of updates. And yeah, I think we know where a lot of these coaches fit into the piece of the puzzle. But there's a lot that Nick Saban's going to cover at 4 o'clock. And I think that's going to be a very telling press conference because there's a lot of information that could come from that short 15, 20-minute press conference when Nick Saban stands at that podium inside the Malmore Football Complex.
Yeah, sure could be. I guess depends on how much he wants to reveal at that time. Certainly, usually the focus is recruiting, but, he's got a whole new coaching staff that hasn't been announced. It'll be certainly interesting to see if any of that comes out in this press conference. But, so many different things. Of course, there's been some discussion about Iyabi Anoma going into the transfer portal, which we posted yesterday about 2 hours after that came out, that Iyabi had gone into the portal, that we expected his name to come out pretty quickly. And Coach Saban announced earlier today, though, that he did announce that Yabi's name was no longer in the portal.
Which is a huge – I mean, if you want to talk about the biggest commitment there, because the Yabi Anoma, yeah, I think maybe it's been a little bit frustrating. It probably is for a lot of these guys. But if he could stick with the process, this guy can be a big-time player.
That's it, Ryan. And, you touched on it earlier about it not always being for everybody. And I think Yabi's gotten in here, and, he's a 5-star player, a guy that was the number 1 high school pass rusher in the country last year, 24 sacks out of Baltimore. He came a little ways from home. He had to get adjusted to what this place is, and it's difficult. You go through practice every day lining up on Jonah Williams, a top 10 NFL offensive tackle, or if you line up on the other side against Jedrick Wills and you're getting knocked off the ball and you're just not quite what you thought you were, you have a little bit farther to go than maybe you anticipated. It's a little bit more difficult. Then all of a sudden things start getting tough for you because, you're not quite maybe living up to your own expectations. And I'm sure that's a big part of it with a Yabi. I mean, it's difficult for these guys, especially these highly recruited 5-star players sometimes, to make that kind of an adjustment.
Rodney Orr, TiderInsider.com. Rodney, as always, thank you so much for your time. We'll be excited tonight. WVUA 23 with Gary Harris, which is part of our lineup here on Tide 102.9 on WVUA as they do a recruiting special tonight at 6:30. Rodney, as always, thank you for your time. Have a great afternoon.
Hey, Ryan, appreciate it. You guys take care.